project manager, David DC Carl. We're here to discuss Convergence of Cyriss in depth. Thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on the new faction.
Thank you.
First question we had is just tell us a little bit about Convergence of Cyriss as a whole, in general fashion.
Well, the Convergence of Cyriss is born out of the Cult of Cyriss, of course. They first appeared in the Witchfire trilogy back in, I believe, 2002.
Right.
So this is not a brand new group, but back then, as a player, before I came to Privateer Press, I was very taken with them and interested in them. These clockwork priests and the amazing technology they wielded. I even went so far as to purchase the original inked drawing of Father Lucas back in the olden days, and that's framed in my house. So I've always been a big fan of this group and of what they represented, all of their technology and their mathematical approach to things.
Knowing your involvement in the production of the faction, how did you go about designing the Convergence as a whole?
Well, there were a number of steps in the process. There were a lot of ideas that Matt Wilson was sure he wanted to integrate based on his previous work with this group and with their agenda. There were also some ideas that Jason Souls got down in an early document. I had the privilege and the opportunity to flesh that out and start adding additional ideas, additional ways that they view their philosophy. The 9 harmonics were something that I researched and developed over some time. And then also, of course, the game mechanics. Matt really wanted to show how their direct control over the vectors was implemented. And so he brought us this mat and rat idea, where initially it was a mat and rat equation, basically, based off of the Casper's mat and rat. But that was one of many ideas that got simplified a bit, but still that the spirit of it lived on into the faction and became what we use today, how the mat and rat values of the caster always are what their vectors mat and rat would be. Another idea that we eventually brought about was the induction idea, and that was something that I actually put forth. And originally there were a number of different ways to cause induction based on which vector did this thing and what they did, but like the mat and rat idea, it's something that got simplified a bit, but that the spirit of it really helped form the faction. So you have these warcasters directly controlling these vectors and this channel of power flowing through the battlefield, and all of that made it into the Convergence book we see today.
Fantastic. A number of people that I've spoken to, and that looking at the artwork of the book and everything that's been released here at Lock&Load, is definitely the appearance of the faction. Definitely something different than any of the other ones. I mean, Retribution is certainly a little bit different than looking at other factions that we have, Signa Arcade or even Menoth faction. What specifically was your inspiration in designing the appearance of Convergence of Cyriss?
So there's actually a great big folder on our server of all of the art inspirations for the Convergence of Cyriss, and similar for other projects that we've worked on. And there were a lot of different inspirations, everything from like detailed pictures of the inside of a watch to stuff, of course, from the Witchfire trilogy, and the clockwork but also artistic nature of the faction really carried through in the different designs, the different models and units. And you can definitely see that it was inspired by the Convergence, or by the Cult of Cyriss back in the Witchfire trilogy, but also see that it has a bit more of a shine on it, a bit more of an artistic flair, an Art Deco sort of look.
We were asked by a number of fans, asked us how you came up with the names of some of these models. I mean, they're just incredibly unusual. I know people are going to have difficulty remembering them at the start, but we'll eventually get into them. And just how did you go about naming those things?
Well, there's a few of the names that just kind of the original title stuff. Like the Clockwork Angels was one that was what they were called in the original concept brief, and it just never changed. But there are others where we didn't have a good name in the concept brief, we just had a placeholder, so I was tasked with coming up with what those names would become.
Sure.
And I had, I think, 3 or 4 pages front and back of just like tons and tons of terms. Geometrical terms, kinematics terms, astronomic terms, just like all different branches of mathematics and science, all like kind of put into these lists, like columns and columns and columns, pages and pages. And so I would approach a model like the algorithmic dispersion Optifex was, he used to be an acolyte, he didn't have the rank of Optifex yet.
Interesting.
But the algorithmic dispersion Optifex is one of my favorites, because I was like, alright, what is he really doing?
Sure.
He's taking the magic of the convergence, which is a formula, an algorithm, and he's putting that out into the world and using this conduit created by the Warcaster and their vectors, these near the jacks to do it. So he is their algorithmic dispersion acolyte, sending out their spells. And so a lot of it came from like giant pile of names and what do these things do and how do we interpret that into the game.
Did you put everything you wanted into this first release of the faction, or is there anything that you didn't get a chance or got scrapped because of balance reasons, anything like that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I put everything I wanted into the faction in the sense that by the time we finished playtest and had locked all the contents, I was thrilled with what we had, with the way the faction was, how it worked, and I felt very much that it was ready to go out into the world of factions that have been around for 10 years already. There's plenty that you can do with them. They've got a great variety of warcasters who really impact the battle group. So I had everything I wanted, but there are also a few things that didn't quite make it in. They may show up at some time in the future. I did at one point have a kind of a prototype assimilator that was a character in the sense, not of the character sense like Old Rowdy, where he's got a personality, because Convergence Jacks aren't like that, but where it was a prototype. And there was only one of them so far, so that was this character model. And we might see, whether it's that exact Jack or not, we may see something like that someday. So there's still plenty of room to grow, even though we do have a fully ready-to-go self-contained faction.
What approach will Privateer Press take in releasing future models like that, additional to the faction, just based on need, depending on player feedback, that sort of thing?
It depends on a number of factors. Definitely the way the faction is received will play a bit of a part, but also just taking a bit of a breakthrough too. We've done what we really wanted to produce for them in the meta that we are currently in, which for us is through another 2 or 3 books. So after that though, we'll be looking at ways that we want to expand them and what the right way to release that content is.
So on a more personal level for yourself, what is your favorite model in the faction? Personally for you, DC?
You know, that's a tough one because to me they're all like so cool and so special, but I've got to go with the Iron Mother Directrix. I really like her play style, how it very much typifies everything that we kind of wanted to show about the Convergence. She showcases the religion really well, she showcases how they treat military engagements very well, and also she's fun to play. In terms of my favorite model, kind of in a more lighthearted sort of way, and also in a more competitive tournament sort of way too, that would have to be the Attunement Servitor. I almost never build a list without one, because I love to have that flare ability on tap, and again, it's something that really plays into what I want out of their playstyle. They're a clockwork faction where all these different pieces turn other pieces, and it creates just this final machine that crushes your opponent, and the Attunement Servitors and their -2 defense are a big part of that. And they're cute, as my wife will tell you.
I'm sure that'll make a difference for a lot of people. Is there something in the Iron Kingdoms that you haven't made yet that you'd be interested in turning into a faction if you had the chance?
I'm not the one who makes those decisions by any means, but I would love to have the opportunity again to really get involved with this sort of development work. So if the opportunity ever arises, if Matt and Jason walk up to me and say, hey, we want you to make some other element of the Iron Kingdoms, I will definitely quickly say yes and be right on board.
Is there anything else you can tell our listeners about Convergence of Cyriss?
The biggest thing is just that I hope that you guys really enjoy playing with them and playing against them in the years to come. I think they're a blast, and I hope you will too.
DC Carl, thanks you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.